I am California of the past.
I am California of the past.
I am
California of the past.
I'm Beryl Williams, and I have been the curator of the Monterey Park Historical Museum since 2002. When I lived in Monterey Park between 49 and 61, there was no historical society, there was no museum. But at some point, people decided we need to begin recording and gathering the history so that it's not lost. And so in 1970, the Monterey Park Historical Society incorporated, and the first president was Vera Hutto. And I just really enjoy the fact that Vera Hutto is an immigrant. She is Australian by birth. And so in 1970, when there was need for a president of the Historical Society, Vera Hutto stepped up and signed all the incorporation papers and all of that. She was very involved, a lady locally, involved in the Women's Club, and at some point she needed a fancy dress to wear to a convention. And so she went to a store on Valley Boulevard, and she bought a zipper and a black fabric, and the grand total was $2.50, and she wanted to sew sequins on the dress to make it a little sparkly, and I believe that there are 40,000 sequins on the dress, and she had to sew each one on the top and the bottom, because if you only sew it on one side it might flip over. And so I was telling someone this was in the day before women had cars. I'm pretty sure she didn't have a vehicle, because there isn't a woman with a car who would sit at home and sew 40,000 sequins on a dress. They incorporated in 1970. They started requesting donations and storing the material somewhere. I thought perhaps, I don't know where they met between 1970 and 1985, but in 1985, there was a little room which today is the Gribble Room, which is the fourth room that we have, and that became available for a museum. So in 1985 they opened that room as the museum, and that went on for a while, but they still had the majority of their items in storage. During Louise Davis's tenure of the Monterey Park Historical Society, Manuel Tovar had completed his 21 mission models and 21 portraits of the missions. Mr. Tovar was just absolutely infatuated and in love with the missions. He visited all of them. He got the plans from Mission Carmel, which is located on the Monterey Peninsula. And I don't think his house was a mansion, and he was storing all of them at home. And the family said, there's not enough room here for us and the missions, you know, they're going to have to go somewhere. And so then he started shopping around for a home for his missions, and he found a sympathetic ear in talking to Louise Davis, and she said, oh, we would love to have them, because of course Monterey Park sits on land that was part of Mission San Gabriel, because each mission had 30 miles north, south, east, and west, all the land as far as the eye could see. And so the problem was they were already stuffed to the gills with that one little room. So Louise Davis talked the city fathers into building this extension. And I mean, I consider it a major accomplishment, because it quadrupled the size of the museum. And they built it primarily to house the missions, but it also enabled them to bring a lot of their other items out of storage and put them on display. And so the museum opened in 1988, either summer or fall. And the reason we are located here is because the city owns it. It is part of Garvey Ranch. Richard Garvey was one of the last big landowners. He owned 5,000 acres at some point, although he began selling it off in 1892. maybe in the 1880s, and he did run cattle up here. We have some barbed wire fence that is from Garvey's ranch, and we also have a horseshoe that is believed to be from one of the horses on Richard Garvey's ranch. It was found by a Parks and Rec worker. And so Richard Garvey Jr., when he died in 1948 and his father died in 1932, there were no heirs because Richard Garvey Jr. Had not married and left no children. And so the city of Monterey Park came into possession of what land Richard Garvey had left. And after paying off his debts, then they owned it. And the park was not, improved until after 1961. I know that for a fact. It was just wilderness up here, but it was land that we owned, and so this was just the easiest place to put a museum. You don't have to get eminent domain and kick anyone else out, and there was already actually an observatory here. And the reason we have an observatory is because Richard Garvey Sr. liked astronomy, and his son took up the hobby as well. And Richard Garvey Jr., between 1932 and 1948, decided, well, why not build an observatory? Today's board of directors, the people who see that the exhibits are maintained and improved and are working their way through the storage areas, are building upon what the first two generations of people accomplished. This museum was extraordinarily well started. Vera Hutto and her board members did an excellent job of getting the initial cabinetry and getting the museum off and running. We had a rich story to tell in Richard Garvey Sr. and Richard Garvey Jr. And then Louise Davis came aboard and was an indefatigable lady who had a history of not taking no for an answer, and was successful in talking the city fathers into this addition to the museum, which tripled the amount of space that was on display. And now Pauline Lemire as president and myself and the other board members are trying to make further improvements and just enable the museum to thrive in the 21st century.